Hi, welcome back. Again, I'm Eric with, I don't have a company yet, but I've been calling myself User-Friendly Presentations. So, we talked about pitching and we met Pitchman. So now I'm going to talk about how Pitchman can help you with networking. Networking is the next thing we'll be talking about in this segment. And I go back to our original question, which was, what's your purpose? You really want to keep purpose in mind again. Why would you want to network in the first place? Sometimes you network just for the sake of networking. Practice networking. You might go to a party, and nothing to do with planning, but you're just going there to meet some people and hang out. But while you're there, you might as well meet some people that talk a little bit about what you do or find out what they do. That's the other part, is asking questions. What do they do to elicit information? I'm a firm believer that you never know who you might meet and what kind of connection you might make. It could be at a party randomly and you end up meeting a daughter of the president of some planning group you want to work at. I mean, who knows? So it's always kind of good to have a pitch ready, and it's always good just to network for networking's sake. Obviously, if you're going to a conference like APA, American Planning Association meeting, they intentionally set up networking opportunities. I think they even do one for students. I'm not sure. I think there's an introductory session for students. And even if you have been before, I think they're always great to go to, because I'm a firm believer, again, that you should take advantage of being a student. Potential employers are always happy to talk to students. Once you graduate, you can't say you're a student anymore. You're not in that situation. You can't say that. So it's the same thing with email or calling people. If you say, I'm a student at Virginia Tech, oh, great, I'll talk to you. But sometimes if I say I'm a town employee from Blackbird, they'll go, huh? But as soon as you're able to say I'm a student, it helps a lot getting you in the door sometimes. In a general sense, were you at my little spiel last year, Adam, on this?
I don't think so.
No, okay. A lot of what you're doing with networking, and when you're getting down to sit with someone for a job interview, you're trying to translate your experience that you've gained at school or elsewhere into skills that are applicable to that job you're trying to get. And that's sort of telling a story. So I'll just kind of go through my little story, and it's kind of entertaining and interesting because I don't have a planning background at all. But it gives you an example of how you might spin some of your experiences into something that's relevant to a job. So I'll go way back. For me, and basically the story is called How I Got My Job now at Blackbird Transit about 4 years ago. My background is that I went to undergrad in California, and I got my first degree in speech communication. So I graduated, my bachelor's, did some sales jobs, retail sales. I actually sold luggage for a little while. And then I sold some workshops and seminars. And then I went back to school because I decided I didn't want to do that forever. And that's when I went and got my master's degree actually in ergonomics. And I studied driver behavior, how people drive cars. In my case, I used a driving simulator. So it was a little different slant on things. But graduated, and the simulator experience got me into a job with a military subcontractor. So again, I can talk about that, but it was working with Navy and Coast Guard. So, and then during that I finished my master's, and then decided I'll work for a couple of years, and then let's go back to school again. So I had 3 years experience between both degrees, and I decided to go back for my PhD at Virginia Tech. So here I am finally at Virginia Tech. The reason I came to Virginia Tech originally was because at a conference I actually met someone, and I heard about the Smart Road. And as you may or may not know, the Smart Road is a 2-mile test track here at Virginia Tech. It's world renowned, and at that time I was really interested in studying driver behavior, so I figured I'd been told by many mentors that Virginia Tech was a place to go. So again, long story short, came to Tech, finished in 5.5 years, but I got my PhD and got a lot of great working experience here as a researcher, all in transportation, all on the Smart Road, and then actual real roads too. So I ended up getting a postdoc with NIH, National Institutes of Health, and you might wonder, how would National Institutes of Health have anything to do with driving? Well, it just so happens that they study teenagers and their parents. So they study teenagers' diets, they study teenagers in smoking cessation. They want to look at how parents get involved in that situation, in all the situations. And then, of course, one thing that we all know about is that teenagers have trouble driving, and 3,000 people a year die that are 16 years old each year. So the NIH has a huge interest in this. They treat it like a disease. They use the same models they use for biological sciences, medical sciences. Why not transportation research. So, long story short, got a postdoc with NIH, and this was around 2004 when I started. In 2007, my boss, again, we're with NIH, federal government agency, saw the writing on the wall about the economy, and he knew in early '07, before the economy was crashing, he knew that he was not going to get funding for a 5th year for me. So he warned me. He said, "You need to start looking for a job." So I wanted to stay in Blacksburg. I had met my wife here, and she didn't want to leave. She was from Northern Virginia and did not want to go back. And I'd been going back and forth to Maryland every week for a while. So we decided to look around this area. So I started looking at my network, you know, people I'd already met. And I thought about, okay, who have I met? So I kind of kept that in the back of my mind. And then we found a job listing for a Blacksburg Transit transportation planner job. I don't have any experience in planning, but I have good experience in writing, good experience in doing presentations, and I know transportation in a general sense from the research I've done. So then I put 2 and 2 together, and I realized that one of the people in charge of this hiring process was a guy named Dan Brew. And I knew Dan from the Smart Road, because he had connections with VDOT, and they had an office at the Smart Road. Again, long story short, but my network helped me get the job. I literally went with Dan and had an information interview with him about the position that was being advertised, and he said, "Yeah, I think you should apply." And I don't know exactly what he did in the background, but I'm guessing he whispered in the right ears and helped make sure my application got reviewed. And again, long story short, with no planning experience at all, I became Blacksburg Transit transportation planner. I found out what I really wanted was someone who could analyze data, and you know from GIS, it's not a hard skill to transfer from research to GIS from the same skills. They wanted someone who could write, and I'd done lots of that. And they do grant proposals, which I'd done several of with NIH and Virginia Tech. And their grant proposals for Blacksburg Transit are relatively small and short compared to what I'd done before. So it was a great set of transfer of skills that I could demonstrate in my interviews. So again, long story short, but I showed you hopefully how my experience, in this case in a non-planning situation, related to a planning position I was applying for, and how I could merge the two together and paint that story during my interviews. So the result in my case was this job. Networking with Dan was essential. Another person I didn't mention, but when I walked in the interview, there was a panel of 4 people there, and one of them was named Debbie Freed. Debbie Freed works for Virginia Tech as the alternative transportation manager. I didn't know she was going to be on the panel. I didn't know anything about her being there, but I had met her 8 years earlier on a pedestrian bicycle committee that I volunteered on in 2000. So 8 years before this interview, I'd already known Debbie. I walked in the room and there she is. I'm like, "Oh, hey, I know you." So I don't know exactly what she said when I left, but I think it was good enough because I got the job. And she was able, instantly, we had an instant rapport with the person I had met in a totally different situation. And it just came back to, in this case, helped me a lot because I walked in the room and boom, instant rapport, and she was able to say a few good things about me from my volunteer work before. So the importance of networking, again, is because you do not know who you'll meet and where it might help you later, in this case 8 years later. So hopefully that was a short version of overview of what networking is and why in my case it works well. If we can cut the camera, we'll go to the next section and we'll talk about the 14 networking tips.